I've been cutting hair on Main Street since '79, which means I've listened to 45 years of other people's lives while holding a razor to their throats. There's a rhythm to a small-town barbershop you can set your watch by. Tuesdays are for farmers and quiet men. Fridays are for boys with cowlicks before picture day. Saturdays are busy, and the lies get a little bigger. Fish get longer. Golf scores get shorter, and everybody's back stops hurting once they're in the chair. My shop is narrow and honest. Checkerboard tile. 2 Belmont chairs that still hiss when they rise. A single fan that clicks like a metronome. I keep the old glass jars filled with blue barbicide because men trust the things their fathers recognized. There's a radio in the corner that lives somewhere between old country and baseball. Some afternoons I think the radio knows this town better than I do. My daughter June helps on Saturdays when she's home. She's 24, back from grad school the way a tide comes back. Quiet, sure, carrying pieces of far-off places. She swept this floor when she was 8, learned to fold hot towels at 10, and by 16 could fade a high and tight smoother than half the barbers in the county. The old boys swore she had lighter hands than mine. I pretended to be offended and then made sure the tip jar was closer to her side of the counter. There are a few rules in my place that aren't posted. You tip what you can. You don't talk politics unless you can keep your voice the same temperature as the coffee. And you don't speak sharp about a man's family while he's got a blade in his hand. Which brings me to the part where the trouble started. Last spring, a man in a slate gray suit rolls into town the way a storm rolls across a wheat field. Clean line, no apology. New Mercedes, real estate flyers in the passenger seat, and a smile that belonged to a man used to shaking hands only when a camera was pointed at him. Folks said he bought the old McCrae place out on Birch Ridge and planned to build estate lots. Said we'd thank him when the property values rose. Folks say a lot in a town that still remembers who sold out to whom in '93. He came through my door on a Friday afternoon, prime time. The bell over the frame gave that little jangle that makes men look up from the paper. He took off his sunglasses slow, looked around like he was appraising a fixer-upper. "You take walk-ins?" he asked. "We take neighbors," I said. "If you're one of those, you'll do fine." He gave me the smile people learn in boardrooms. "Name's Carter Vance." I told him to have a seat. June had just finished a boy's taper and was wiping the chair down. Carter looked at her long enough to make me notice, then looked at me to see if I'd noticed. "What are we doing today?" June asked, voice light as a clean comb. He touched his hair like it belonged to someone important. "Tied around the sides, leave some on top. I've got meetings." June draped the cape over him, snapped it at the neck the way you do when you want a man to know he isn't the only one in charge. I went back to my chair, and a regular named Dale who talks like a porch swing and tips like a church plate. The radio hummed through a 7th-inning stretch. Scissors ticked. The afternoon felt like it always does when the day starts to sigh. Then Carter said, loud enough for the room, "Didn't know they let girls cut men's hair in a place like this." He said it like a joke. He said it the way men say things when they want a bruise and then act surprised you're bleeding. June didn't flinch. "You'll survive it," she said, and went on with the blend. He let out a small breath that wasn't a laugh. "We'll see." Dale caught my eye in the mirror. I set my comb down, slow, and told the radio to take 5. Some towns have police. Ours has memory. And in a shop like mine, both do their work quiet. I didn't say anything just then. June finished his cut clean as a Sunday shirt. But when she snapped the cape loose and brushed his collar, Carter looked her up and down like she'd parked crooked in his space. "How much do I owe, sweetheart?" he asked, pulling out a wallet fat enough to need a diet. June told him the price we charge everybody. He peeled off a 20, then thought better of it and put it back, replacing it with a 10 in singles like he was counting out mercy. He did leave one thing behind, though. Not cash, not an apology. He left me the shape of something I haven't felt in years. A slow, patient kind of heat that doesn't look like anger until it's time to pour. On his way out, Carter paused in the doorway and looked at the old wooden "open" sign that's hung there since my father ran this place. He smirked. and flipped it with 2 fingers like it belonged to him, watched it swing, then let the door close. "See you around," he said. "If you've ever spent your life holding a razor steady, you learn the difference between a cut and a mark. What he left on my daughter wasn't a cut, it was a mark. And some marks need shaving off the long way. It's funny how quickly a man like Carter can make himself visible in a place that prides itself on being slow to change. By the end of the month, you couldn't walk down Main Street without hearing his name in one context or another. The diner waitress mentioned he tipped all right, but always ordered like he was daring the cook to mess up. The real estate folks, 2 of them from over in Colson County, were already showing his glossy brochures at the Rotary breakfast. And the mayor, who I've known since he was a scrawny quarterback with acne, was suddenly talking about modernizing our image. I just cut hair and listened. That's a barber's privilege. You hear what folks don't say. June, for her part, didn't bring up Carter again. But I noticed the way she looked at the door when the bell rang. Not fear, just a certain stillness. Like she was taking the measure of whoever walked in. Carter came back 3 weeks later. I'd bet money he waited that long on purpose. The shop was steady that day. 3 regulars in the chairs, 1 reading the sports page, 1 pretending to sleep. Carter made sure to greet them all by first name, which meant he'd done his homework. He slid into my chair this time. "Figure it's only fair to see what the old man can do," he said. "You want the same cut?" I asked. "I want the best cut," he said, smiling like the words should have cost extra. Now, I've cut the hair of preachers and farmhands, teachers and troublemakers. I can tell when a man wants a cut and when he wants a performance. Carter wanted both. So I gave him the neatest side fade I've done in months, blended so smooth you could lose a coin on the slope. I kept the talk light, all weather and baseball scores. When I was done, he turned to the mirror, looked at himself for a long beat and said, "Huh. Not bad for a guy your age." That got a little snort out of Dale, who was waiting his turn. But Carter wasn't done. "You know," he said, running a hand over the side of his head, "I might have some business opportunities for you. More upscale clientele moving in soon. You could redo this place. Fresh paint, better lighting, maybe toss out some of this, what do you call it? Antique stuff?" I smiled like I was considering it. "I call it history." He shrugged. "History doesn't pay bills. But maybe I can help you with that." It wasn't the words. It was the way he said, "help," like a man offering you a rope he fully intends to pull out from under you later. He tipped exact change, not a penny more. When the door closed behind him, June came in from the back room. "You gonna take him up on his offer?" she asked. I shook my head. "We don't sell the soul of the shop to someone who'd rent it by the hour." She grinned faintly. "Good." Still, something in her eyes told me she knew we hadn't seen the last of Carter Vance. And as it turns out, she was right. Because the next time he came in, he didn't come for a haircut. It was a Tuesday morning, the slow kind where the shop smells more like coffee than aftershave. June was out running errands, and I was halfway through trimming Mr. Whitaker's sideburns when the bell over the door gave that same lazy jingle. Carter Vance walked in like he owned the deed to the place. No appointment, no haircut needed. His hair was the same perfect gelled shape as last time. He had that faint scent of expensive cologne that smells like money trying too hard. "Morning, Whit," Carter said to Mr. Whitaker. Whit didn't bother looking up. Carter took a slow walk around the shop, hands in his pockets, eyes on the walls. He stopped at the old black and white photo of my father standing right where I was now. Scissors in hand, a line of men waiting their turn behind him. This place could be something else, he said. Modern, efficient. I didn't answer. I was focused on making Whit's sideburns match. That's when Carter leaned against June's station. The chair still had her purple comb sitting on the counter, a clean cape folded over the armrest. "She's a pretty girl," he said, almost absent-minded, but with that deliberate tone men use when they want a reaction. I set my scissors down. "That's my daughter." "Lucky man," he said, smiling. "She's got talent too, but she could do better than sweeping up in this old place." Whit cleared his throat, and I caught his reflection in the mirror. His jaw was set tight. "What do you want, Carter?" I asked, my voice steady. He straightened up and slipped a business card from his jacket. "I'm hosting a little gathering at my place this Friday. Some folks from the city, some local names. Thought maybe you and June could stop by, make connections, think about the future." I didn't take the card. "We're busy Friday." He set it on the counter anyway, right next to June's comb, and tapped it twice. "The future comes whether you're ready or not." Then he left. Whit waited until the door closed before speaking. I've seen his kind before. Always looking for the one thing you can't afford to lose. I nodded, though my mind wasn't on Whit's words. It was on the way Carter had said, "better than this old place." That wasn't about the shop. That was about me. And about June. Which meant Carter Vance had just stepped off the sidewalk and into my lane. I don't go looking for trouble anymore. But when it parks right in front of your shop, sometimes you have to show it where the road ends. Friday night came in warm and lazy, the kind of evening where Main Street smells like fried catfish from the diner, and every porch has a glass of sweet tea sweating on the railing. I wasn't planning on going to Carter Vance's gathering. But then June came home that afternoon holding one of his fancy, cream-colored invitations. "He dropped it off at the diner while I was getting lunch," she said, eyebrows raised. It wasn't so much an invite as a summons. Thick cardstock, embossed lettering, his address in neat serif font like a country club newsletter. "I told him we weren't coming," I said. "I know," she said, "but I think we should." That made me look up from my chair. June wasn't one for idle curiosity. "You sure about that?" I asked. She nodded. Better to see what kind of game he's playing than let him make his moves in the dark. "That's my girl." Carter's place was up on Birch Ridge, just like the rumor said. The old McCrae estate, gutted and rebuilt into something that looked like a catalog spread. Gravel driveway wide enough to park a fire truck. Front porch lit by hanging lanterns that were probably ordered online for more than I make in a week. We walked up the steps, and I caught sight of Carter in the doorway. Slate gray suit again, this one a shade lighter. Smile polished enough to see your reflection in it. Well, he said. "The Main Street royalty has arrived." Inside, the house smelled like expensive whiskey and fresh paint. Clusters of people stood around in their weekend best. Some I recognized from the Chamber of Commerce. Some I'd never seen but could tell that weren't from here by the way they avoided eye contact. Carter moved through the room like a man conducting an orchestra, dropping names, making introductions. He made sure to introduce June twice. Once to a slick-looking man from a regional investment firm, and once to a silver-haired woman who owned half the rental properties in Colson County. "Your daughter's got poise," Carter said to me later, as if I hadn't raised her. "She'd be wasted behind a barber chair." I just smiled and asked where the bathroom was. He pointed me down a hallway. As I passed the study, I caught a glimpse of his desk. Wide, polished oak, papers neatly stacked except for one leather folio lying open. The top sheet had my name on it, and my property tax record. I closed the study door quietly and went to find June. We didn't stay long. On the walk back to the truck, June broke the silence. "You saw it, didn't you?" "Yeah," I said. She looked straight ahead. "Then you know he's not just talking about the shop. He's circling." I nodded. "And when a man circles something that belongs to you, you don't chase him off yelling." June glanced at me. "What do you do?" "I put the truck in gear. You make sure that when he takes his shot, he misses so bad he doesn't try again." And right there, between the purr of the engine and the crickets outside, the first pieces of the plan slid into place. A man like Carter Vance doesn't just walk into a small town. He walks over it. He's used to people folding in the face of his confidence or bending when he applies just the right pressure. But pressure works both ways. The thing about running a barbershop for 35 years is that you learn two important truths. 1, people love to talk. 2, they trust you with what they'd never say to anyone else. So Monday morning, I started talking. Just enough. Not lies, not slander, just reminders. To Mr. Whitaker, I mentioned how the McCrae place had gone through 3 owners in 10 years. To Dale, while trimming his beard, I recalled how the last big spender who tried to modernize Main Street ended up bankrupt and halfway to Florida before the paint dried. To Mrs. Cooper, under the hum of the hairdryer, I asked if she remembered the zoning fights from '98, how the town didn't take kindly to outside improvements without asking. It didn't take long for Carter's name to start coming up in those same conversations, unprompted. Meanwhile, I made my own quiet visits. Down to the Historical Society, to dig out photos of the shop from when my father ran it, framed in sun-faded oak. I cleaned them up, got copies made, and hung them where anyone could see. The pictures did the talking for me. 3 generations of haircuts, same tile floor, same brass register. Folks like to see themselves in a place, and those pictures made the shop feel more like theirs. June, without me asking, started giving the regulars little extras. Clean towel for the neck, a dab of bay rum aftershave on the house. Word of mouth moves faster than any ad campaign, especially in a town this size. By the end of the week, Carter was already on the defensive. I heard it in his voice when he stopped by the shop on Thursday, trying to sound casual. "Busy week?" he asked. I shrugged. "Same as usual." "I've been hearing my name around town," he said. "Small towns are like that," I replied. "Everything echoes." He smiled, tight this time, and left without another word. June leaned on the doorway after he was gone. "You think he knows?" "Oh, he knows," I said, wiping down my scissors. "But knowing and proving are 2 very different things. The trap wasn't set yet, but the bait was out. Now I just had to wait for him to bite. Carter's mistake came on a Saturday, the busiest day in the shop. 3 chairs running, the bell over the door jingling every few minutes, clippers buzzing like cicadas. June was booked solid with her own clients. I had a line of regulars waiting, and the air smelled like talc and fresh coffee. Right around noon, Carter walked in. Not unusual, except this time, he didn't sit. He didn't even look like he was here for a haircut. Instead, he stood near the counter, arms crossed, scanning the room like a politician sizing up a crowd. "Afternoon, folks," he said, just loud enough to carry. Hope everyone's ready for some changes around here. That got a couple of heads turning. Changes? Dale asked, from the waiting bench. Carter smiled that same smug smile. Big plans for Main Street. Gonna make it a destination again. New shops, new look. Might even replace this old place with something a little more 21st century. The room went quiet, except for the hum of my clippers. Mr. Whitaker, who was in my chair, gave me a look in the mirror that said, well, there it is. You planning to knock down my shop, Carter? I asked, my tone steady. Not knock down, he said, all fake charm. Think of it as, upgrading. That was his slip, not the words themselves, but the fact that he said them here in front of a room full of locals, half of whom had been getting their hair cut in this shop since before he knew it existed. Dale leaned forward on the bench. Upgrade, huh? Like you upgraded that bait shop into a smoothie bar no one goes to? A couple of people chuckled. Mrs. Cooper, under the dryer, muttered, some things don't need upgrading. Carter's smile faltered just a hisser. Well, some folks are ready for progress. Others get left behind. That did it. The whole room stiffened. Around here, left behind is just another way of saying you don't matter anymore. I kept cutting, letting the silence do its work. Carter realized too late that he'd overplayed it. He muttered something about having another meeting and left, the bell jingling sharp in the quiet. When the door shut, Dale spoke up. You know, Tom, I think I'll prepay my next 6 cuts. Mr. Whitaker added, make mine a year. That's the thing about a small town. Loyalty isn't bought. It's earned. And Carter had just burned the bridge he thought he was building. Now, all I had to do was give him the final nudge toward the edge. The next week, the town council held its monthly meeting in the old courthouse. Everyone knew it was really just a formality. Small towns run more on porch conversations than on official agendas. But it was still where plans got their first public hearing. I'd heard Carter was going to present his revitalization proposal that night, which meant he was about to walk right into the perfect stage I'd been quietly building for weeks. The room was half full when I arrived, the smell of old wood and coffee lingering in the air. Locals clustered in the back, murmuring about potholes and the high school football schedule. June was already there, sitting 2 rows from the front. Carter took the podium like he'd been rehearsing for this moment in front of a mirror. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, Colson County is sitting on untapped potential. Our Main Street could be so much more than it is. A place that draws visitors, creates jobs, and moves us into the future. He clicked a remote, and a projector lit up the wall with slick renderings of glass front shops, bright signage, and pedestrian walkways. The problem? Right where my shop stood, his design showed a modern mixed-use retail space. I stayed quiet. No point jumping in too early. When he opened the floor for questions, Mrs. Cooper was the first to speak. What's wrong with Main Street the way it is? She asked, arms folded. Carter chuckled politely. Nothing's wrong, but we can't cling to the past if we want growth. Dale stood up next. How much of that growth puts money in your pocket, Carter? That got a ripple of laughter. Carter's smile tightened. Then June raised her hand. Calm, poised, the way she always was when she wanted to cut through the noise. My father's shop has been in our family for 3 generations, she said. It's where people come not just for a haircut, but for conversation, connection, community. Can your retail space give them that? The room went quiet. Carter hesitated, just a flicker, but enough. And that's when Mr. Whitaker, bless him, stood up with one of the old photos I'd given him the week before. "This is Tom's father," he said, holding it up. "Cutting hair in the same spot Carter wants to tear down. My father sat in that chair. I sat in that chair. My son sits in that chair." The photo made its way down the rows like it was a piece of scripture. By the time it got back to the front, Carter looked like a man who'd brought a lighter to a rainstorm. His proposal was technically tabled for further review, but everyone in the room knew it was already dead. Carter avoided my eyes as he left. I didn't gloat. I just tipped my hat to Mrs. Cooper and walked June to the truck. A week after the town meeting, Carter Vance's name stopped coming up in conversations. Not because people forgot, but because there was nothing left to talk about. The revitalization proposal never made it back onto the council's agenda. The glossy renderings vanished from his website. And Carter himself? Well, word was he'd turned his attention to other opportunities in a bigger town downstate. That's how folks around here say someone packed up before they could be asked to leave. One morning, June came into the shop holding a white envelope. It was addressed to me in neat block letters, no return address. Inside was a single business card, Carter's, with the words, "No hard feelings," written in blue ink. I stared at it for a moment before slipping it into the drawer under the register, right beside the old photos of my father. Life went back to its natural rhythm. The bell over the door rang, clippers buzzed, coffee steamed on the counter. Mr. Whitaker brought in his grandson for his first haircut, and Mrs. Cooper decided she liked her curls a little shorter for summer. One slow afternoon, I stepped outside and looked down Main Street. The sun was hitting the shop windows just right, making the glass glow warm and gold. Across the street, Dale was sweeping the front of his hardware store. This town has its flaws, potholes, gossip, the occasional outsider with too much ambition. But it's ours. And some things don't need upgrading, not because they can't be improved, but because they're already doing the job they were meant to do. That night, I closed the shop and locked the door, same way my father did, same way his father did before him. In the quiet, I could almost hear the echo of their voices. I ran my hand over the worn wood of the counter and smiled. Carter Vance came to town thinking he could change it. Turns out, the town and one stubborn barber changed him instead.